It's showtime. We are live. Welcome to another AndroidPro webinar. This time we are streaming this publicly on LinkedIn and on YouTube. And today we have a special guest. Mohsen will tell us about convention plugins and show some implementation with Detekt for static code analysis. Mohsen is Android developer with over 5 years of experience, and I am delighted that he decided to show us this presentation. Hello and welcome.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I think we've met last time on the meetup in Free City, Poland. You had similar presentation there about convention plugins and stuff like that.
Yeah, it was in the north of Poland, Gdansk, right?
Yeah, in Gdańsk.
But we couldn't make it online, and I had some friends who really wanted to be in that meeting, let's say, or the event. So this is the online presentation for them, I would say.
Excellent. So bringing this topic online. Everyone watching us, please just write in the chat if you can hear us, if you can see us, and we will be starting. We've got 10 seconds delay between YouTube and LinkedIn Live, so I need just one comment saying that you can hear us. Okay. Okay, so without further ado, the stage is yours.
Great, thank you. So I'm just going to share my screen. Yeah. So this is the presentation. It is about sharing build logics between different modules and integrating Detekt. So Detekt is basically a static code analysis library. It's totally open source, and we can combine it with CI/CD and put it and upload it on inside the GitHub repository, and then the CI can run the basically a script on the whole project, and it can give us code smell, like code quality, and for example, checking if there is a unused import even. So it's a great tool for having more code quality, and we will be discussing it in the next slides. But before that, just an introduction. I'm an Android engineer. I started in 2015. Before Android development, I was doing penetration testing. So basically, I have a cybersecurity background on Linux-based servers, and as well as Windows servers and web applications. I'm also familiar with iOS development, more specifically Swift UI, because it's declarative UI, and it's kind of the same with Jetpack Compose, and I'm in love with that. I'm also an open source contributor, more specifically Google repositories, or let's say now in Android project. I have lots of pull requests and contributions in there. These are my social media and GitHub profile. You can just check it out later. So now I will be discussing about buildsrc. So if you remember a few years ago, we were using buildsrc with Kotlin DSL just to write some scripts and use them all together for our projects. For example, the most common way of using that was to put everything as objects. Like, let's say, put all of those dependencies and the libraries that we wanted to use inside the buildsrc, and then using them was pretty easy. But there are some, of course, disadvantages with that, and it's not a recommended approach nowadays. The first thing was the complexity. So if you wanted to do something in there, it was just adding so many complications, and basically it was also adding some, let's say, scripts from the Gradle itself. Another thing was about managing the dependencies. So, for example, Nowadays, with the build logic or with the version catalogs, there is a very good support from the IDE itself, from JetBrains, let's say. We can easily check everything. We can easily go to the version catalogs, and if there is any update, we can just check it out, and we can easily change that. So it's pretty convenient. Unfortunately, we didn't have such a thing previously with buildsrc, so that's also one of the negative points. The most important part, and I mean, as a developer, the most important thing for me was this item. No caching support between the builds. So suppose that you are working on a multi-module project with different brands. I mean, nowadays, based on the users' expectations, we will be working on different projects, or let's say some projects which has something like more than 10 modules, maybe 20, who knows. So we will be having such a structure here, right? And whenever you are trying to build a project, sometimes you have to wait for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, maybe more, who knows. But later we will be discussing and we will be fixing this issue with the convention plugins. And basically with convention plugins, there is a support for the IDE. It's pretty much more compatible with Android development nowadays. And this buildsrc is kind of deprecated, I would say. So let's go to the next slide. Yeah. So for having convention plugins, they are just some custom plugins, right? And we can share some logics between different modules so that we don't have to repeat the same thing again and again, right? So as you all know, we have 3 different sections for each Gradle file. The first one is the plugins block. We can just put the plugins in there, for example, HILT for dependency injection, Detekt statistical analysis, Compose, and application, which contains some of the libraries that we want for Android. And the next part is about Android block. So for example, you can set the compile SDK, minimum SDK, and the other configurations. This is pretty common for all the Android projects. And the last one is, of course, dependencies. We have it everywhere on Android. So now what we are trying to do is to basically move everything from the first part, which is plugins, to the convention plugin. So by using plugin manager, we can get access to the plugin, which is an interface, and then apply whatever we want. So for example, here we have plugins, and based on the plugin manager, this is a scope function. So with it, we can apply all of these things here, all of the plugins that we want. So this will be for the plugins block, right? Now, the next part. This is the next part, and it is basically for the Android block. Suppose that we are trying to share some logics, and our logic is just compile SDK, minimum SDK, and combine options. This is just setting the Java version, as you know. So by using application extension type here, which is an also interface, we can do that. It's pretty easy. So by the way, don't worry about the codes. We will get back to the whole code later. This is just sample of how we can do that. So by using application extension type, we can basically get access to the Android block, and then we can do our stuff here, right? The next part is, of course, dependencies. We can directly use dependencies, not a problem at all. Now, after sharing the logics, we will be having such a structure, okay? So basically, we don't have to, as you know, we have lots of logics inside the Android, or let's say codes inside the Android block. And after sharing the logic, we will be having something like this. So it's barely 10 lines of code, right? So I basically shared the first plugin here, and the Detekt is being used here. And we just have to set the namespace for that module. And here there will be some dependencies. So it can be specific for a module, right? So now, as we discussed, we have plugin manager, okay? And we have application extension, which is here. And the next part is, of course, dependencies. So what we want to do here is to just create a custom plugin And the plugin can be implemented using a plugin. So let's see what this plugin is. Like I said, it's just an interface, and it's receiving a type, okay? And this type is project. This is coming from the Gradle itself. So by implementing plugin and with the type of project, we can do that. So this plugin interface has only one method, let's say. And let's see where it was implemented. Yeah, here. See, there is only one method for that, which is called apply. Once we have access to that apply, we can just use the target. So let's see what this target is. As I said, this is an interface again from the project itself. And then we can get access to Android plugin and dependencies block. So what is this plugin? Let's just double check that. It's an Android application convention plugin, and it consists of application plugin, Android plugin for Kotlin, application extension. We can see some other codes here as well, compile options, default config, compile SDK, just some normal Android block codes. And the rest is not really important right now. It's just for the compose and some other configurations. And the rest is, of course, dependency. You can just set the dependency here based on the specific module. Okay. Another thing that we should be doing is to have a Gradle file for this build logic module as well. Okay. So as you can see, I created a module and I called it convention. And inside the convention, there will be some plugins, of course. But this plugin, this module itself here, you see this module itself will also have a setting file as well as a build.gradle file, which contains the logics for what we are trying to do. Okay. So previously with the buildsrc, we had to do something like here, just to set up the module. And here is the same because it's just Kotlin. Kotlin is everywhere here. But the more important thing here is to add these parts for now. And it consists of a Gradle plugin. And this is the library, let's say version catalog. So basically version catalog is what we need nowadays. And it's a pretty convenient approach for having all the dependencies and the versions in one place. So what we have to do for this build.gradle of the build logic module is to add 3 dependencies. Okay, actually 2 for the beginning, 2 because I will be discussing Detekt later. We can just add it later, right? So the first one is com Android tools build, which is the Android Gradle plugin. The next one is also for the Kotlin from the JetBrains. Okay, this is for the Kotlin. And later we can add, I don't know, the Detekt or whatever we want inside inside this module itself. Okay, but this is for later. We will be discussing this Detekt later. And after that, of course, by using Gradle plugin, we can just register the plugins that we have. And if you remember, we were discussing Android application convention plugin. So Android application compose, this is for compose, and this is for the Android. This is for the plugin that I was discussing about. So we just need to have an ID and, of course, an implementation class. It's just a name. And this coin cap is based on my brand or the application, so we can just change that. Not a problem at all. So that's it. We just have to add or let's say register the plugin here, and then add 2 dependencies. And of course, having Kotlin DSL inside the plugin. And then the setup will be ready. Okay. So the next slide. Now we would like to add Detekt. So if you just open the Detekt, as I said, it's an open source library, and it can be used easily. Everything is clear here. There's a repository, and then there's a implementation for it, and a implementation guide. So what we are trying to do here is to just add this tool. I would call it tool because it's a kind of tool which we can use it for Android inside the module that we have as build logic, so that we can basically reuse it again for the other modules as well. In this way, I don't have to repeat the same logic that I have for the configuration, so it's going to be pretty convenient. Obviously, after implementing that, we will be having something like here. So I only have CoinCap, Kotlin Detect. This is my plugin, and I'm using it here for this module. The module is core data. And then I don't have to add any other logics for setting up the Detect. So this is called sharing the build logic, right? So now let's open the plugin that I have. So for applying the Detect, I just have to add this plugin. It's called IO GitLab Arthur Bosch, the name of author, and the Detect. So we can just find everything here. See, we have this one. Normally what we do is that we are adding this plugin and then the configuration, okay? And of course, there are some other rules that can be applied, but we don't need them. We just need this part and this part. So, like I said, we will be implementing plugin with project type, applying the plugin, right? And then this is the rule. So I just created an extension from the project, and I called it configure detect. Here is the configuration of the Detect. We can just easily find it from here, right? This is the old configuration. And the rules can be also specified here. So as you know, Detect has some kind of rules, and everything can be found here. See, we have lots of rules for code smell, code quality, and everything else. For example, for wildcard imports as well, and etc. So I applied the, just a second, I lost the file. So I applied the plugin here, and I have the configuration here as well, right? So that's pretty much it. You don't have to do anything extra. But if you want to also use the Detect formatting, which was built at the top of KT-lint, this is a very convenient, library which was built beside the Detect itself. So if you go just through the Detect formatting, you will see a lot of information about it. This is the documentation, formatting rule set. And basically here there is information about it. As you can see, there is also another dependency for that, and it's called Detect formatting. So I also used that because it was built at the top of KT-lint, and this is exactly what we have and what we need on Android, project. I mean, normally we can use some other things as well, but I prefer using this library. And also this is the information or the website for it. There are lots of information, rules, and custom configurations. So now we have Detect, and also we have Detect formatting, which is using KT-lint with some specified rules. Okay. So like I said, we can just specify the dependency here and then do it this way. But this one is something weird, right? Isn't it? By weird, I mean, like, how are we specifying that dependency? So if you have already enabled the version catalogs, and you have version catalogs, and you are using version catalogs for your project, there will be an extension. As you can see here, there is an extension. You can just use that extension. And you see, the way I did it was that I used get by type, and by type of version catalog extension, and I used the libs. So libs means the libraries, or let's say the dependencies that we have, or I specified here as libraries. So what is this library? It's called Detect plugins, Detect formatting. So obviously we should be able to find that formatting here as well. See, we have that Detect formatting. Don't worry about this part, which is saying that it's not being used. Later, once we compile the project, it will be used from this part. Okay, so now we have Detect and we have Detect formatting. That's it. That's pretty much it for the setup. But we also need to register that, right? Because it's a plugin now. So for registering that, here it is. Just use register ID, pass the ID, and then implementation class, and that will be it. So let's go to the next slide now. Like I said, this is the setup. Now we have the plugin, the rules, and of course, Detekt formatting. This will be the configuration. You can just get the file and pass the rules to it. And there are some other configurations, autocorrect, parallel, and etc. Now, I remember that I was working on a project, large code-based project, and I needed to have the scripts as well. So scripts means Kotlin DSL scripts. So for example, you can just share modules, you can do whatever you want. And I needed to add them inside the build logic because I didn't want to create separated modules. For example, one called buildsrc and one of the other would be called build logic. So what I did here was to kind of mix them together just to have a single source of logics and convention plugins, and of course scripts all together. So for doing that, we just need to create a module here inside the build logic along with the convention. So by creating a module and calling it scripts, for example, it's just an example, you can just name it whatever you want. And after that, all we need to do is to include it inside the module that we have. So here it should be runtime only, and it only works with runtime only. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So you can just pass whatever you want. It will be your script module. If you don't do that, if you don't do it this way, it's not going to be compiled. And the only thing that you can do here is to just use runtime only for the scripts module. Okay. So this is how I've done it. I use project, and I basically provided the scripts module for the build logic module. See, pretty easy. And then I had both convention plugins, scripts with Kotlin DSL, and I could do whatever I want. Now, if you remember, I was discussing the caching strategy. So with the buildsrc, if you remember, I mentioned that it wasn't really possible to have the caching strategy. For example, if I wanted to change or update one dependency in buildsrc or Kotlin DSL, then the script was basically updating all the other dependencies as well. So this is going to, of course, take time, and we don't really want that because we are just changing one dependency in there, right? So to fix that, once we are using convention plugins, we can easily go to the Gradle properties and add these two flags. I'm just going to call them flags because it's more convenient. So by having these two flags, it's going to tell the Gradle that we need the caching strategy between the Gradles. So for example, if I change something in here, it's going to update only this module, not the others. So this is what we didn't have with the buildsrc. It was just compiling everything and basically re-downloading everything, and it was taking a lot of time. And of course, we need this one as well. This is for configuration cache, and we're going to need these two flags to enable that caching strategy. Okay, that's it. We don't have to do anything extra. Now let's go to the next one. Yeah. So I only wanted to say something. We can also do something with the GitHub Actions, for example, doing some scripting. This is not part of the slides, but I can just give you an idea. So as you know, for running the Detekt plugin that we have here, for example, we are running the script before pushing anything to the server, right? So we can do that with just one command. Inside the IDE itself, it's going to autocorrect. It's going to remove the unused imports and give us the code smell and all the other informations before we push anything. So this can be also included inside the CI as well. So I have a project, and I already did that here with GitHub Actions. So as you can see, this is the first part for the checks. And I have, these are some checks just to check if the project is being built and if it's being compiled and there is no problem, okay? What I'm doing here is that I'm also running the Detekt itself. So before we do that, before we push anything, we obviously need to run that inside our IDE just to be sure that we have the clean code, not the other clean code. I mean, by clean code, I mean that we don't have any other unused imports and so many issues which Detekt can find. We can have that thing here as well as a strategy for our CI. And this script is going to run the basically detect once we are pushing something. So with this role on push branches master, so you can, if you are using master or if you are using develop, you can just change it to develop. And whenever you are creating a new pull request, it's going to run the detect on that pull request as well. So we can combine that kind of in here as well, just as an idea. So I think that's pretty much it from my side. So let's hear the comments and questions. Any questions so far?
I think we don't have questions on the chat right now, but I have one question because I'm thinking about bringing this type of build logic into the project I'm working on, and I'm wondering how to start migrating from weird buildsrc and custom Gradle scripts to version catalogs and so on.
Yeah.
What first steps would you recommend?
The first thing is about dependencies. So as you know, once we are creating that buildsrc, we are thinking about making the dependencies easier to use for different modules. So what I would do here, I would just move everything, refactor everything from the versions and from the dependencies to the convention plugins. I mean, you can find a lot of samples for version catalogs. You just have to copy paste that, and you will have everything. You just need to do a little refactor. It's just pretty easy, right? It's just one file. Yeah. So I would start with the versions and dependencies. That's for sure. Another part is about the logics that we have. So I'm not sure what we have inside the buildsrc or Kotlin DSL part, but I would imagine it's just some kind of logics for I don't know, scripting for modules. We can do a lot of things. We can add different extension functions in there, as you know. So it depends on the project. I would just start with the dependencies and the versions for that, and later on we can combine them inside the build logic module, just like what I already described. And then we will have the scripts and convention plugins as well. It will be a combination of convention plugins and the scripts.
And do you think that refactoring to KTS is worth it? My experience with Groovy scripting is maybe not scripting, but using Groovy DSL for Gradle is much better than configuring Kotlin script KTS or however they call it these days in new project. And once you update Android Studio, everything is broken. And
of course, with Groovy we didn't have the IDE support, if you remember, but with Kotlin DSL we have all the supports we need. So that's why we are not normally using Groovy nowadays. And we have code completion support, for example, for Kotlin DSL nowadays. We can write extension functions. It's Kotlin, right? Kotlin everywhere. And we can do a lot of stuff with Kotlin. And it's much better than Groovy. That's why Groovy is kind of deprecated nowadays, I would say.
yeah, somehow. I love the autocomplete for version catalogs.
Yeah. And it also checks for the versions, new versions for a dependency, for whatever we want. And one thing we can do is to basically add something else as well. So I'm just gonna give you an idea. Let me share my screen. So in this project that I have, I'm using a bot called Renovate. This is a best practice from Google, and they already, have I already created an article or wrote something about it. It's just a bot, nothing special. We can just configure it easily. And this is going to create separated PRs for each dependency that we have. So suppose that we have update for detect, just like what I have here, as you can see. All I have to do is to click on this one, this checkbox, and it's going to run all the script, or let's say run the renovate on the dependencies that we have. And this renovate is compatible with this version catalogs. So basically, you will be checking everything, and this part will be automated, kind of, because later on you can also have the CI/CD as well in here. As you can see, we have two updates, right? And this is going to check for the unit test, UI test, and then running detect. And of course, we can have the CI/CD as well. So version updating dependencies can be automated, like totally automated. You don't have to do anything extra after that. And if you just want to make sure that everything's fine, you can just check the results for the actions. So I made it happen with actions here. And this is the script that I have. You see, setup Java, setup Gradle, run detect. It's going to run the detect on the project with that update that I have. So suppose that we have updated the detect, and we just need to make sure that everything is working fine, right? We have to be sure about it. So if everything is fine, then it's going to give us the green light, and then we can easily merge that pull request. So basically, updating the dependencies will be totally automated here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I remember something like Dependabot.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I used it a few years ago, and I'm not sure if it had the capabilities to edit code in the pull request. It was just suggesting you should bump this JSON to newer version or something like that.
Yeah, that's also an alternative, I would call it. But this is like, I never liked it, but it's the same thing, actually. It's the same thing, But I found that Renovate more convenient and more easier to configure, because that was the best practice, and Google mentioned it already. So Google developers mentioned that we need to use this one because this is the best practice and this is the tools that we are using. So they were using the same thing on the Now Android project previously. This is what I remember from last year. I'm not sure about it right now because they might be changing it. But they wrote an article about it, and I used it because it was a best practice, and they saw something behind that. So yeah, but that's also the same thing. Yeah, we can use that as well. Sure.
Yeah. Okay. In the meantime, we have a few comments from the YouTube. I cannot see comments from the LinkedIn, or we don't have any comments on LinkedIn Live. But yeah, about Kotlin DSL. Is Kotlin DSL really good? The next part is I read few blogs saying that Kotlin is little slow compared to existing Gradle build. So is it really okay to move the existing project from Gradle to Kotlin?
So let's answer to them one by one. Is Kotlin DSL really good? It depends. Suppose that you have a multi-module project and you need to share some dependencies between different modules. Yes, that can be done with Kotlin DSL and scripting. That's pretty convenient. And we used it for the previous project and it was pretty good. But you need to be, of course, sure that you are combining it, for example, just like what I did in this project, so that you will have that caching strategy between the builds. You don't have to wait for 10 minutes, 20 minutes after that. That's pretty good, right? So yeah, it's not that bad. It's pretty good. It's Kotlin. Kotlin is much better than Groovy. yeah, I would say that's pretty okay. So the next one is
Yeah, and to this I would add that you don't have to rewrite your build.gradle files to KTS. You can start by adding just new Gradle KTS script to your project and write your custom script for accessing file, modifying variables. So you can have both Groovy and KTS in the same projects just to experiment. Or
yes,
if you have some existing Groovy scripts, you can chat GPT to Kotlin version and
yeah,
play with it.
yeah. There is also another thing. I'm not sure in which version Google introduced Kotlin DSL. So now if you create a new project from the Android Studio, the latest Android Studio, at least after Flamingo version, you will see that the Gradle files are totally with Kotlin DSL, and they are not using Groovy anymore. And it is kind of deprecated. There was an article about it. I read that already. So Groovy is already deprecated, but we can have them both inside one project. And this is mostly for the projects where there are some modules and the company doesn't want to refactor that module, so you have to create new stuff with Jetpack Compose and Kotlin DSL. And you will have the same. You will have both actually Groovy and Kotlin DSL all together. So yeah, depends on the project sometimes.
Yeah, and about build performance.
Yeah, I would say Kotlin DSL or the buildsrc is going to slow down the builds. That's for sure. By having those strategies that I mentioned, adding the caching strategy, this problem will be, of course, solved with the convention plugins. This can be solved, yeah.
But I think the initial configuration phase takes more time with KTS.
Absolutely, yeah. It takes time because you need to, declare some dependencies, and then you need to create some files, convention plugins. Of course, you need to configure it based on your project. It's going to take time, yeah.
Yeah.
But later on, once you have everything, you will be happy with that because it's not going to take your time like 10 minutes or 20 minutes just for a simple build. You can just easily add the offline caching, and then it's going to compile and build the project faster than what you expected.
Yeah. So the last question from Kartik is: so is it really okay to move the existing project from Gradle to Kotlin?
I would say it's worth it, yes. But some of the companies, from the business perspective, they don't really care about such things because this is more about the developer experience, not the customer experience, right?
Of
They don't
course.
really see such a thing. Yeah, yeah. They don't really see such thing, and the issues that the developers are facing. So, which is why I would call it developer experience. But this is just one-time upgrade, and after that, you can just easily, use those plugins with just 10 lines of code, and everything will be much easier for you as a developer. So it is based on the user's experience, not the user experience, but the developer's experience. Yeah, it's just
And
improving the user.
developer experience eventually translates to user experience.
Exactly. So once you are having a proper setup for the project, you can implement something or some features much faster than before, right? You don't have to wait for that build to happen after 10 or 20 minutes, and this will reduce the headaches, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, we have a question. Will the presentation be available somewhere? Yeah, it will be on this YouTube channel. I'm not sure if it will be kept on the YouTube, on the LinkedIn. So it will be on YouTube, but for sure it will be uploaded to our Android Pro platform.
Yeah, sure.
So, and Marcin wrote, great presentation.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Martin.
Yeah. So I think there's no more questions right now, so we can wrap it up and move the discussions to our Discord channel. You
Okay.
joined already our Discord, so that's great. And thank you very much for giving us this talk. I heard it on GDG Free City. Now you bring this, you took it online, so you can share this presentation with your friends. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Yarek. Have a nice evening ahead.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you,
you.
and thank you
Peace. Bye.
everyone who watched us live or are just watching the recording. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.